Welcome back to the show, everyone. I get the opportunity every so often to see a Facebook post, see a LinkedIn post, see something that resonates with me and gives me the opportunity to tell a story. And that's exactly what we've got here. I've got Michael Josifovski with me. I know him as a buddy that I went to high school with, and we'll get into the content that he posted a minute ago. But what you might not know about him is that in a past life, he was really good at this thing, like kicking a football, like to the point where you probably recognize the horseshoe sitting on that face mask there. And so he tells a story where on this day 5 years ago, I stepped onto the Arizona State University football field, my last combine in the NFL. Looking back, these moments feel lifetimes ago. Here's what you didn't see. And we're going to black that out for a minute because we're going to talk about that. That's going to be the big part of the story. And we go into what we learned is that true strength lies in resilience and courage to face change and be man enough to change yourself with it. Your plans are never going to work out the way you hoped, but it doesn't mean you didn't win. Simply get up, make adjustments, and move forward again. And he goes on to talk about having his Lord and Savior in his life, and I think that's important too. And that's going to be a piece of the story that holds over the top of all of it. But want to break into the story, Michael, if that's okay with you. We'll go back to this picture where you're balling out here, and again, we're recognizing the logo in this picture. But I want to know the story as we go all the way back to the fact I remember you from high school. You were a soccer player and a darn good one, who the next thing we know, he's got pads on a Friday night. And that's kind of the way that our small school was set up, is that for the purposes of football kicking, we borrowed a soccer player every so often. And you were, not to knock anybody else in the upper or lower years that we went to high school together, but I think you were the first one in a while that our football coach actually had the confidence in to try something other than an extra point. And so kudos to you for even getting that far. But let's hear a little bit about this story. Jump in, Mike.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Anthony, and thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, I mean, if I put myself back in high school, I mean, geez, that was a wild ride. It's been a wild ride since then, but yeah, kind of long story short, there we stumbled across that. My freshman year, I started as varsity soccer. Football was not on my radar, um, but at that time, right, Coach McCormick and Coach Bird had approached me like towards the end of the freshman year, and they're like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you wasting your time playing soccer at Hobart? And Hobart's very good now, but at that time, not so much, right, in soccer. And so, they convinced me to come out on the football team, and kind of the rest is history. Yeah, I mean, just without us realizing it, even I didn't realize it at the time. All of a sudden, we really had a chance at kicking some long field goals and having a threat on the football field that way. But I'll be forever grateful to them, especially Coach McCormick, for kind of like guiding me through that whole process and getting me to where I got to. But I was fortunate to have quite a few more mentors along the way as I went on to college and the NFL and everything like that.
Yeah, so let's jump into that part of the story. You're kicking field goals and extra points in high school, and you get the opportunity to do this in college. That's the way the story goes, right?
Yeah. So, and there's a little bit of twists and turns there. So, like in high school, kind of didn't take school as seriously as maybe I should have, but also my dad passed away my senior year, so it was kind of like down and out because of that. I had a lot of D1 schools that were trying to recruit me. I mean, I still have like letters, tons of letters of like D1 schools. The Illini at the time, Coach Ron Zook was the coach at that time. They had just beaten Ohio State, kind of all those things. So I got to kind of taste what it was like getting recruited by these places, but didn't have the grades to get in. So I actually went to JUCO immediately after high school for a couple of years before I finally landed at Marian University with Coach Karras, and that's kind of where things took off, and we had a huge success. I mean, that was such a phenomenal team. We won a national title. And even while I was there, I had the opportunity to kick a lot of field goals and have some, game time heroics. So I set a lot of records while I was there. I think some of them still stand to this day. Won a national championship. I was MVP of the national championship game. And then, yeah, that's when the NFL scouts started calling and trying me out and kind of going from there.
Love it. And so it won't be included in this video, but if you have any interest, search Michael's name into YouTube and you can see him kicking the ball 1.5 miles and 2 miles and 3 miles. I think it's actually in the 50 to 60 yard range and maybe a little more, but there's proof to back this up. It's not just a cool story. He was actually doing this stuff, and so we'll continue on at that part of the story. You've reached the, I guess, the pinnacle of college sports at the I think it's the NAIA level for Marion. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so to continue that on, you've got professional scouts looking to have conversations with you. What's that part of the story look like?
Yeah. So that was a time where even though I had Coach Karras, who, his family has been in the NFL for a long time. He played in the NFL himself, his, Super Bowls and things like that with his son. Um, there wasn't much guidance. I mean, like no one in my family had ever kind of been through this process before. Even a lot of people from Hobart, no one had really kind of making it that far. We do have a few with, Coach Osika and obviously like back in the 70s with the Kuchenbergs. But no one ever really guided me through that process. So it was basically like the phone would ring or like Coach Karras would tell me, hey, there's gonna be some scouts at practice, this week, just, be ready. And so it was like, all right, well, what do I do? Right. So I just started taking everyday training seriously. Started eating right. I started hitting the gym like crazy. So if anybody knew me back in high school, right, I was as skinny as a twig, right? But I went to the gym every day and all of a sudden started packing on muscle, started packing on weight. And as good as I was in high school, once I started taking the training seriously, which really wasn't until like my junior, senior year of college, um, I, I started getting really, really good, and I think at my peak, I could literally hit like 70-yard field goals, kickoffs. I was regularly putting kickoffs in the back of the end zone. And back then we were still kicking from the 30-yard line. And then even senior year, we finally moved it to the 35. So I was kind of like that first generation to do that. And once we moved it to 35, all my kickoffs were always hitting touchbacks, unless of course we were doing pooch kicks, right? So, a lot of my stats, if you go back and look at it, the only reason the touchback percentage isn't higher is because we were literally doing pooch kicks just for training, because we were just stomping on everybody we played. But long story short on that is, I got in touch with a guy named Gary Zauner. He was a former coach with the Ravens. He was a former special teams coach with the Vikings. Like that year that Gary Anderson had his perfect season on field goals, Randy Moss, all those guys, right? When the Vikings really had a shot at making the Super Bowl, Gary Zauner was there. So when I was coming out of college, he had just founded kind of this NFL combine for kickers, because everyone's familiar with the combine. We're down in Indianapolis where, all your like star players go, but a few kickers get invited to that, but it's not really a kicking, kind of a kicking event, right? It's more so for everything else. It's more so really for the medical background checks and testing that goes on behind the scenes. So I got invited to the senior combine that Gary Zauner was going to be putting on. No college coaches could attend, but college coaches were actively no NFL coaches could attend, but all of the NFL coaches were in touch with Gary to see like, hey, give us that video, who would win the competition and everything like that. So I went to that and did really well. I didn't win the competition, but placed like probably in like the top 5 or top 6 free agents and kickers that year. And then the Colts called me, and then the Colts invited me to the facility for their pro day to have a tryout. And then that's when I went there and did a pro day tryout. But that's kind of another story as well, if you want me to dive into.
Yeah, so let's jump into that. This is right around when you'd be graduating from college, and you're basically at a life's crossroads here. You can keep chasing after the dream, or you can go and get that big boy job. And I wanna better understand. Because if I understand your story correctly, you may have chosen that or had that crossroads a couple of different times. And so go ahead, let's walk through the Colts and tell me, where does it go from there?
Yeah, so actually that's a great point. That happened every single year after college, where you had to make that choice. But so the Colts invite me on for a pro day tryout. They invited like, a handful of kind of the top free agents in the local region to come try out. And when I showed up there, Coach Pagano was the head coach, Ryan Grigson was the GM, and Tom McMahon and Brant Boyer were the special teams coaches. And Tom McMahon kind of knew who I was because that was his job to kind of have a pulse on talent in the area, but everyone else didn't really, know about me. And then I showed up and I was just warming up, putting field goals up over the net onto the roof of the administrative building on the other side of the Colts stadium. So if you or not the stadium, the Colts practice facility. So if you've ever been there, the Colts have two fields, one's indoor, one's outdoor. Well, we were on the outdoor that day, and there's a facility behind it. Well, I was putting them over the net onto the roof of it, and that's when Pagano noticed, because obviously my name probably never made it to his desk, even though it was their job to kind of give everything. But he saw it and he was like, wow. And then while I'm warming up and I'm getting ready to kind of do their testing, I noticed Coach Pagano step away from kind of the other skilled positions to start watching me do my training, and I was like, oh man. And then all of a sudden Ryan Grigson came out. So we did kickoffs. All my kickoffs were in the end zone. For field goals, to be honest with you, because it was such like a crucial moment for me, I lost track of how many we kicked. I lost track of how many I made. I lost track of how far back we went. I was just like zoned in, and I'm just like, I'm just going to kick. But I do remember that I'd never kicked as hard or as far in my life. It's just like that day I was just totally focused in unconscious, and everyone was really impressed. And then Coach McMahon comes up to me. He's like, all right, he's like, you did phenomenal. He's like, but we're the Colts. We kick indoors. So, and he goes, and out here, obviously you have like a little bit of wind helping you. We're not sure, is it you or is it the wind? They go, so let's do the same exact test inside. And the results were the same. We went inside. And after that, Coach McMahon came up to me and Coach Pagano, and they were like, God damn, you got a big leg. Coach McMahon said he hadn't seen a leg as big as mine since like what's the name? Jan Stenerud. Right.
Jan.
So yeah. So like
Hall of Fame Jan. I love it.
Right. So that made me feel really good, and I appreciated that. And like the draft was still like a couple months out. But he literally told me, he goes, keep your phone on you, and then even the weeks leading up to draft day, he called me and he's like, hey, keep your phone on you for draft day. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not, am I actually going to possibly get drafted? And so I didn't get drafted, but that 2013 draft happened. And then literally, I think Justice Cunningham was Mr. Irrelevant that year, who also went to the Colts. And 5 minutes after the draft ended, they called me and they're like, hey, we want to formally invite you to rookie camp and kind of take the process forward from there. So that's when it all started for me. So at the time, to get back to your point, Anthony, like I did have a job offer on the table. So I had a job offer for Northwestern Mutual as a financial advisor. And so Jason Plunkett in the area, I still remember him. He was such a great guy. He was kind of like training me and mentoring me to kind of come in and do Northwestern Mutual. And I really wanted to. I saw the value there. And I also kind of had a couple other options, maybe go corporate, on the other side of the coin. And I told him, I'm like, hey, I would love to move forward with you. I'm like, but I kind of have this opportunity right now with the Colts, and I'm just going to focus all my time on training here. So I delayed my entry into the corporate world and focused on that for an entire year. Went to rookie camp. I got an agent. My agent sent me to Minnesota for like a month to go train at Ryan Engelbert's ETS gym. While I was there, there was a couple other college kids there with me who were nobodies at the time, but it was Adam Thielen, Joey Collins, a bunch of us, like we were like, oh, whatever, we're just trying our best, but a few of us made it. And Adam Thielen really made it.
Yeah.
So yeah, all that happened within like a couple months from December 13th being the national championship game until we'll just say May, when I ended up being in rookie camp. And all those decisions had to occur all in that time. And now, you're talking about a 21, 22-year-old kid, right, doing all that. But I chose to go the football route. And then after rookie camp, they brought me in there. They also brought Brandon McManus. Brandon McManus is actually the other person in my picture holding my football, who's had a storied career now with the Denver Broncos. They brought us both in, and throughout the time, they were kind of like letting us know, hey, you guys probably aren't going to make it to the regular season, because at the time, Adam Vinatieri was still in prime form. Right. He's like, we don't got a problem with Adam. He's still doing great, but we like to make sure we have tabs on who the talent is in the area. They go, but after this, you go as far as you can. After the Colts, you'll probably get a couple other opportunities, but they were like, both of you will no doubt, end up on a roster somewhere. So that was really nice to hear. So I kept going. And then as it turned out, just long story short, after that, I never actually got on another team after that. McManus did, and, ended up where he ended up, but it never really happened for me. But I kept chasing it all the way until 2018. Went in and did the various every year, went into Gary Zauner's combine, qualified, and got invited and performed in front of all the coaches. Every year was always like in a top 5 free agent category. Even started doing the kind of side spring ball leagues, like the Alliance of America Football League. There was also like another like Major League Football that was trying to come out. None of them ever really came to fruition, but tried out for all of those, won the competitions there. And yeah, and it's like every year a new job offer would present itself, and I'm like, do I do the job or do I focus on football? And a couple of times I chose to do both, and that was a really difficult thing to do. And a lot of people, like when you're in that process, don't understand like why you make some of the decisions you make. Well, it's because you're trying to balance so many things that probably can't be balanced, right? Yeah. And so it's kind of there. But
yeah, so I've got to make a confession right now that in all of the people that I've interviewed for YouTube, this is probably the first time that I have, in the middle of our interview, forgotten that I was doing a YouTube interview and I'm just listening to your story. Because this is really freaking cool that I get the opportunity to share this with people. And so be honored, but you worked your ass off for it, and it's a cool story to tell. And so walk me through, a little bit of the logistics here. I can't imagine that getting invited to Colts minicamp is a highly paid endeavor. It may not even be paid at all. You can tell me whether that's the case or not. And so,
yeah, I can't tell you that. I can tell you that. So they pay for your. First of all, they take care of everything. Like you don't actually receive a check. Without getting into too many of the details, basically, you don't make your NFL money until you play on Sunday in a regular season game. Yep. Some people can work for guaranteed money or whatever. Those are all kind of like what we'll call those like unique circumstances based on a player by player. But like for normal people, normal rookies, league minimum, yeah, you'll get that, but you got to play on Sunday in order to get it. So, but yes, but they living the NFL life, like being with the Colts, the facility was like immaculate. Everything you could possibly ask for. There was meals provided, like a chef, restaurant. They even bust you around in like one of those like rock star tour buses with like leather seats. They put you up in a hotel. They had like an ice bath and a hot tub, basically the size of a swimming pool. When I got my locker, I was like getting fitted for my helmet and pads and everything. The first player that I ran into who wasn't like a newcomer was actually Andrew Luck. I was walking into the locker room and he had just gotten done with a workout. He was walking out and he was, I mean, I can't say anything bad about him. He was a gentleman. He was a team player, all of that. Like he came right up to me. He's like, "Hey, good to meet you. I'm Andrew." I'm like, "Yeah, I know who you are, man." Like you don't got to introduce yourself to me. I'm like, "I'm Michael," So that was all pretty cool. But no, they don't pay you for that time, but they kind of take care of you for everything you possibly need. But they did pay me for gas. They reimbursed me for gas from driving from, at that time I was actually living in Carmel, Indiana, because I was going to Marion, right? So
Yeah,
from
sure.
Carmel to the I forgot exactly where it's at, off of
56.
Yeah,
56th Street. It's right down the road
right
from my house, man.
Right, yeah, and not too far from Marion over there. But it's they paid me for that gas, so I got a check for $36 from from the Colts. So I have that here in my archive somewhere that I kept.
I was hoping you find a way to catch that with your phone so you can keep that. Absolutely. Right. Very cool, man. And so with knowing the redacted version of the post that we'll eventually share, it sounds to me like there was a little bit of struggle in the way of getting injured in this process. Talk me through that piece of it. How does that start to influence? And you go through this process from 13 to 18, which, if I can do quick math, is basically the heart of your 20s. And does that really start to influence the decision of whether or not I'm going to keep chasing after this?
Yeah, 100%. So like Age is a funny thing. It's like it catches up to you no matter how hard you try to fight against it. I mean, I was at the gym every day. I was eating right. Like I stopped drinking alcohol for like 4 years during this whole process. Um, because I just wanted to be fine-tuned, zoned in, and my performance did increase. Like by the time 2018 rolled around, even though I was, older, um, I was I'd never been that good. Like I'd never been that physical peak condition, as strong as I was and even like as accurate and just dialed in as I was. Um, but 20 going into 2018, um, by that point I'm like 28 years old. I was 27 going into 28, and I had kind of still put my career on hold. I had great opportunities presented to me, and I tried to balance them. So I was working at Motorola as an enterprise account executive. They had, promoted me a couple times, and they treated me really good. But it's like, man, you have this once in a lifetime opportunity. You'd been with the Colts, and you're still like good enough to try to pursue it. So but it demands your full attention, right? But
Mm-hmm.
so does doing well in corporate world, right? And I never like to be the guy who's like half committed, who like can't be counted on, right? And like I could tell it was reaching that point. It's like, do I continue on another year at Motorola, get even deeper, and not be able to give them that commitment that like they deserve, right? Or do I give up on the dream? And I wasn't ready to give up on the dream, so I was like, I stepped back. I relocated to Scottsdale, Arizona, and continued that dream. And that's when 2018, that was my last year pursuing this. So I'd already made up my mind that because of my age, um, this was going to be my last chance at going after it. But then, like, I was at the gym one day, only a couple months before my final combine, and something stupid, like I wasn't even lifting that heavy a weight, just pulled my back, and I was like immobile for 2 weeks. I was sleeping on the floor, couldn't move, just trying everything to get my back in shape. And it's like, it was the worst possible timing because I had worked so hard to get so good right up to the point to have my final combine. Um, and it impacted my performance. So like I went out there and I did not do as well at that combine just because I was in so much pain and recovering. Right. Um, and then once again, after that combine happened, and there was also personal stuff going on too, right? So relocating to Arizona, not having a paycheck again,
Mm-hmm.
going through some kind of personal issues and dating life and things like that, all culminating plus the injury when I had put so much effort into this dream to like just not be able to give my best performance on my last go. That really hurt. Took me a long time to get over that, to be honest with you. But I still went out there. I was injured. It didn't feel good, but I did my best. The videos on YouTube too. I mean, I think I still went back to like 54 yards in the competition. I was one of the only people who advanced to like the long. I guess to give you guys some context, the field goal competition starts with short field goals, less than 50 yards. And if you don't make enough, you don't qualify to go to the long field goals. So every year, not many people make it to the advanced round, and I qualified every time. Every year I did, and I think every year I pretty much got between 54 and 57 yards before I was finally disqualified because basically like one miss, you're out, you know,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. And in the past, so right before I hurt my back, I did a training session with Gary Zauner. This is outside of the combine. I just wanted to work with him one on one, paid him a lot of money. By the way,
Mm-hmm.
you pay a lot of money for these combines every year.
Yeah.
Um, so paid him a lot of money to this training, and the training was great, but he videotaped me, and I made every field goal from PAT all the way back to 62 yards without missing.
I've watched that video.
Okay. I'm glad you saw it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I blasted that, and I blasted that out to all the NFL coaches, and I kept reaching out to them and kept, trying to get in there. My agent kept trying to get me in there, and I had a lot of great videos to back it up, but for whatever reason, never stuck. Um, and so I wanted to have that same level of performance going into the combine, but because of the injury striking at the moment that it did, I didn't. Um, and that's kind of where it comes back to my posts, like, you have this plan, you have this idea, but life gets in the way. So.
Yeah, and so we talk about that post. We bring it back up again, unredacted here, and it seems like a lifetime ago. You talk about the back injury, you talk about the personal life, you talk about risking the career and hours, time, money, all in chasing a dream, and it could be. I'm gonna go off on a little tangent here. It could be really easy, just referencing this again, to have the identity of my name's Michael and I failed at the NFL. But that's not the reality of you, and it's not your identity. And for any bit of this to be actionable for somebody else, I just think that's you are not your circumstances 5 years ago, ever. That is not reality, and it never will be. And so I get to share a little bit more in terms of what Michael's doing more recently. And so if we throw this back up, this is Media Fox Creative. Michael, I need the Cliff Notes version of this at a minimum. What are you doing these days?
Yeah, no, so this is my new baby. This is my new passion. So Media Fox is actually I'm the co-founder of it. It's a full service marketing and tech company. So basically what that means is throughout my corporate life, I was dealing with a lot of like software implementations, big time enterprise level system integrations. And I learned a thing or two, and I figured out how to leverage all these technologies and kind of use my skills in design, which just by chance I was really good at, to form a company. So me and another friend of ours from high school, Joe Forrest, we formed Media Fox. We actually started it back in 2016, and it was always just something fun to have on the side, right? Our cousins would ask us for projects or whatever, and we'd do it. It was no big deal. But really, the past few years, it's hit its stride. Up to date, we have over 25 clients. We have 5 clients right now that have us set up on monthly retainers. And those clients range. I mean, one of our clients does $15 million a year in revenue. So we're in a really good position. We're fortunate for that, and we're still growing. So now Media Fox is my full-time endeavor. I go out and I consult with business owners, small and large, to just understand where they're at and how we can either apply marketing or new technologies to streamline workflows, scale their businesses, bring them more traffic, what have you. And kind of what separates us from everybody else is we're not there just to check a box and say we did it. Like we're big on accountability and trustworthiness. So like if you hire us, we're going to treat that piece of your business like we're owners of it. Like if our main goal is to drive tangible results, things that actually make money, not just things that, not just metrics that look nice or whatever, just, a fancy design, right? If it doesn't create ROI for you, we're not going to recommend it, or we'll pull the plug really quickly. So, and that's resonated really well because the industry as a whole is kind of seen as snake oil salesmen. And there are a lot of them out there. I mean, we run into plenty of them. Like, we take over accounts from people who just horror stories, or like spend tons of money on someone who literally did nothing, just cashed a check. Right. So we're here to kind of fill that gap for people, because marketing and marketing is its own animal that requires time and effort. And if you're a CEO of a company, you don't have the time to do it. Right. So you need someone that you can trust, who actually knows it, to get that piece of the business, because it's also a piece that you need. So, yeah.
Well, if I've learned anything about you in the last 30 some odd minutes, is that you don't half-ass anything. And so if there's an opportunity to work with you, I think that the contact information is right here. We'll link to Media Fox in the show notes for the video. And if people want to get in touch with you that way, that'll probably be the best way to do it. Usually I ask people on the show, how do you get in touch? How should someone get in touch with you? But this time you got it setting up right here for me, and this will be nice and easy. So Michael, I appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your story, giving folks a behind the curtain look at something that the average person will never get an opportunity to understand. And so that's been really cool, my man. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, same here, Anthony. I appreciate you reaching out and having me on.
Outstanding, my man.